Hi, everybody. How's it going? This is Lauren Baker, founder of Search Engine Journal, and thanks for joining me for today's very special SEJ Boss webinar. BOSS stands for Best of SEJ Summit. And with us today, we have Gary Illyes of Google, who was a speaker at one of our past SEJ Summits and is joining us today to tell us how to do better with Google Images. Hey, Gary, how's it going?
Hey, Lauren. I didn't know that BOS stands for Best of SEJ. That means that I was pretty good at one of the SEJs, huh?
Yeah, you were okay. We decided to
Thanks.
bump you regardless.
Thanks.
So
So much better about myself.
yes, mostly because of your incredible picture taking and ability
Oh,
and
it's
how
actually the
relevant
camera,
that
not
is
me.
today. Yep, that's what they all say. So just to let everyone know, before Gary gets started, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So this is going to be pretty much a 25 to 30-minute presentation given by Gary on Google Images and Google Image Search. During the presentation, we'll have a couple of poll questions, which will give you a chance to give some feedback and some answers that will help with the overall presentation of the content, I think, and overall conversation. You'll see a question box on your GoToWebinar panel. During the presentation, please feel free to ask questions as they come up. Then, after Gary is finished his presentation, we're going to do about a 20 to 25-minute Q&A session where you can ask any questions that came up during the presentation and any questions you may have about Google image search in general. So please ask away and we'll address them after Gary is finished. The official hashtag is hashtag SEJThinkTank. Please feel free to tag myself at Lauren Baker, Gary at MethodE, or Search Engine Journal at SEJ Journal on Twitter to let everybody know about the great knowledge that Gary is dropping today. And that's everything. So Gary, I'm going to hand things off to you. Why don't you get rolling?
You're just assuming it will be great knowledge, but actually most of the thing is pretty basic, but most people miss it. Anyway, so this presentation is about doing better on Google Images. I gave this presentation a couple of times already at different conferences, just last week in Istanbul, and people were quite satisfied with it, I am told. So I thought that it would be good to have it also recorded and broadcast to whoever wants to see it. Oops, how do I advance my presentation? This is how I advance my presentation. The presentation itself has three topics, three sections. First, I will talk a little bit about how Google Images works. What is SEO? That's just briefly mentioned because I'm assuming that most people who are watching this webinar already know what SEO is. And then I will actually tell you all the public secrets about how you can do better on Google Images. A little about myself. I'm Gary. I've been with Google for the past roughly 8 years. I work as a trends analyst for Google Switzerland. And my job roughly is to help publishers succeed online. I'm also an underwater photographer, sometimes also on topside. A system dive instructor when not working for Google, and I love to eat a lot. And I'm also a decent cook. That's probably because my father was a chef. And as a child, we spent lots of time in the kitchen. We did everything in the kitchen that you can imagine. We did puzzles in the kitchen, but of course we also cooked. Nonetheless, that's my favorite place in my own house as well. But it's getting a little dated. Some fixtures are not working properly anymore. Some doors are falling off. I'm not very handy. And even just being there feels a little weird. So I am thinking about redesigning my kitchen. How do you get ideas in general? How to get ideas about what would look good in your home? Well, you can do a Google image search. In this case, I searched for beautiful kitchens just to have some idea what others are thinking that is beautiful. And I'm expecting that I would find something here that I might also like or take ideas from. Right away, I can tell from beneath the pictures what the page is about, where the image is hosted, also the site. I can refine my search. For example, if I would have a mansion, then I could probably click that button and or chip and see what and basically refine my search. Once I find something that I like, and this one I actually really like, I can click on it. I end up on a single page view where, once again, I can see what the page will be about. Here, also the description of the page is displayed. And I have a few options to share this one particular page, to save it for later review. And I can also share this collection with, for example, my financial advisor, who will tell me that all these kitchens are way too expensive for me. I can do this with pretty much anything in the kitchen. If I want a sink, if I want a light fixture, if I want a faucet, I can do searches for them. And in some cases, I can also see whether I can buy a particular thing or whether I get more technical information about a particular thing on the page. Basically, what I'm doing is visually discovering the web. So how does Google Images work? How do we get from a page like this that hosts the image to an image search about burrito recipes? All starts with crawling, then with indexing, and then finally we rank the images. Crawling essentially means that with a browser that is very similar to what you are viewing this webinar on, we visit automatically tons of pages. We extract images from there. Basically, we are looking for the image tag, image HTML tag in the source of every web page. And then we take the src source attributes value, which in most of the cases will point to an image. We take those images and then we organize them during indexing. Images that are about food will get in one category. Images that are about a fruit or that are more specific, like apple or banana, will get their own category. And then when someone searches for pictures of fruits, then we will do our best to display images from that particular category, in this case, fruits. We also extract more metadata, as I also said before. For example, on the image search result pages, you can see the titles of the pages, also additional chips that will help you learn whether the page that you're about to visit is about, for example, a recipe, or is just a description of some star fruit. I have absolutely no idea what that is, some drink. We also extract metadata from structured data. For example, in case of that bag of gummies, we know from structured data that it costs $2.99, and the brand is Wrigley. So what is SEO? As I said, I believe most of you already know this and practice this form of magic. SEO stands for search engine optimization. And if you ask Google what search engine optimization is, then it will tell you that it's the process of maximizing the number of visitors to a particular website by ensuring that the site appears high on the list of results returned by a search engine. That was a very complicated sentence. But to simplify it, basically SEOs make sure search engines can access the pages and their content. They create sometimes and optimize, well, usually optimize the content of the pages. And they add and optimize metadata that search engines in general can use to better understand the content of the pages. So how can you do better on Google Images? First, you have to make sure that your images are accessible to Googlebot. You can ensure this by using our free tools, for example, Search Console's inspect URL feature, or even the mobile-friendly test that can tell you right away whether the page or the image is accessible. If the image is not accessible, it's usually because a little file called Robotstxt that's placed in the root of your site blocks search engines' access, or even just Google's access to images. If you want your images to appear on search engines, then you will have to allow search engines to access said images. Now I will stop just a little bit. I want to ask you two questions. And that's essentially, well, I lost the questions. That's great.
Are these the poll questions, Gary?
Yes, these are the poll questions, but I closed the email and I can't find it. But if we chat, then I will have time to actually find them. Okay, so the two questions. Do you do lazy loading for your images on your site? That's the first question. If you don't know what lazy loading is, then you probably want to answer no. And second, do you use responsive images on your site? Again, if you don't know what responsive images are, then probably answer no.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, Gary, is I'm going to launch this poll on my end. First, everyone should see a quick poll window pop up.
I did see the pop-up.
Do lazy loading for your images. Select one of the following, yes or no.
Wait, but I can't vote.
You can't vote. You're not allowed to. Nor can I.
Oh.
We have to recuse ourselves from this voting. So, but about 65% of you have voted thus far. I'll give you a couple of seconds to go ahead and click yes or no. It's a pretty easy. There's not very many choices here. So we have 75%. I'm going to close it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm sharing the results. I'm not sure if you can see them or not, Gary, but we have 40% of the attendees right now that voted says that yes, they do use lazy loading for their images, and 60% say no. Yeah.
That's way more than I expected. Interesting.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Very cool. Very cool.
That's very cool. Yeah.
So that's good to know. I'm not sure how many are using on both mobile and desktop, which I guess is another conversation. But I'm going to go ahead and hide these results right now and launch our second poll question, Gary's second question of the day. Do you use responsive images? Please select one of the following, yes or no. Oh, these votes are coming in super quick, super fast. So I'll give everyone a couple seconds to vote one more time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, final chance. Closing the poll. Booyah, we have 71% of you have said yes, you do
Wow.
use responsive images. And 29% say no. 29% say no. So what do you think about that, Gary?
That is absolutely crazy, because responsive images are actually way less advertised than lazy loading. Basically, you can read about lazy loading even on my grandma's blog. But responsive images are more obscure, I guess. I'm really surprised that the number is so high. That's amazing. I'm really, really surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have a chance later, maybe we can go a little bit deeper on responsive and how it helps overall. But I've gone ahead and given the presentation back to you. So we got the polls in, and you can continue if you'd like.
You're so kind.
Thank you, sir.
That was sarcasm. I'm European. Second, you kind of need to help robots like Googlebot find your images. In many cases, images are, for example, injected with JavaScript, which may cause your images to be discovered very late or very slow. But you can help that with something called image sitemaps. Image sitemaps are an extension of standard sitemaps that you can read about on sitemaps.org. And it's very likely that your site already has a sitemap. And basically, you add additional data to your sitemaps about where the images of each page on your site are located at. This will help enormously Googlebot. Traditionally, Googlebot's main discovery method is by following links and discovering links, including images, from the HTML of your pages. But as we move forward with the web, as the web becomes more and more JavaScript heavy, for example, sitemaps can help enormously, especially image sitemaps, or in case of video sitemaps, can help enormously with the discovery process of Googlebot. And the faster Googlebot discovers your images, the faster it can show it, or we can show those images in Google Images, and the sooner you can get traffic to them. Here are two images. Which image do you think is better? Just think to yourself. You don't need to answer out loud. Also, I will not hear the answers. Which one do you think is better for image search? The one on the right, which is basically just an image and some white space around it, or the one on the left side, which has the image, or the same image actually, along with other images, and also some text around the image? I will tell you the answer. It's the one on the left. Googlebot uses, or no, not Googlebot, sorry. Indexing uses text around the images to learn what the image is about. If you don't have text on the page, then Googlebot, as well as indexing, will have a harder time identifying what the image is about. We do some not very advanced image recognition as well, but that, as with any automated process, when you have to scale to Google size, may take more time to process each image than you giving hints right on the page about what the image is about. And additionally, that image recognition software can tell two fruits can tell the difference between two fruits. For example, if you have an apple and a banana, then it can tell them apart. But if you have, for example, Lauren and Brent next to each other, it will only be able to tell that there are two people in the image, not that one is Brent, even he looks much more handsome than Lauren, and the other person is Lauren. That will not work. So in this case, for example, it may be able. You're very welcome, as usual.
You're so kind.
I know, I get that a lot. I don't actually, which is kind of surprising. Anyway, back to the topic. In this case, the image recognition software would be able to tell that this is some sort of food, but it wouldn't be able, most likely, to tell that it's a picture of a burrito. So make sure that the textual content around the image is there and it's relevant to the image. This can be caption, for example, or actual text that you include in your article, for example. Next, what is missing in this image tag, if you look at it? Well, one attribute that is used extensively by search engines in the image tag is the alt attribute. Alt attributes are a way to provide information about the image that you are linking to in the source attribute. You should use the alt attribute whenever possible to describe concisely and accurately the image that you are showing on the page. This is the #1 priority that you have about annotating images. This can help you a lot with ranking with your images. How to write good alt attributes though. In this example, for that burrito, I put up alt food. Well, that's accurate. It's pretty short, but it's not the best that you can have. What you could have for this particular image, for example, is exactly what the image is about. It's a chicken burrito with lime pieces next to it. And that's what you should put in the alt attribute, not the query that you want this image to rank for, but actually what the image is about. Based on extra signals that we get from the page, we will be able to tell if the alt attribute is accurate. So no spammy techniques, please, in the alt attribute, because that's just not cool. Also, another thing, technically the alt attribute, I think, doesn't have a limit how long the text there could be. But you do want to limit it, not because we can't process it, but because, well, you don't want to overload your pages, for example. That's one thing. The other thing is that we will only consider, we will not consider the whole alt attribute. Next, adding structure data to your pages and the images may result in having your images batched. For example, in this image, we show a Google Homes price and whether it's available in the Google Store. If you want that, if you want your images to stand out, then look into, for example, product, if you have products on your pages, product structure data on schema.org, and make use of it. Make sure that you are only using structure data that is actually relevant to the page. Don't use, for example, reviews markup if you don't have reviews on the page, because we are just not going to probably use it for anything. The other thing is that regardless if we will show a search feature, like in this case, the price and availability, or not. Do use structured data. Add structured data that makes sense to your pages, because it helps Google indexing understand the pages better. And if we understand the pages better, then that also means that the traffic that you get to your site will be more relevant. Make sure that meta description and titles of your pages are good and accurate and not spammy. In this case, Gary's pictures of food that actually make sense for this particular picture. By the way, this is a fake picture. I just made it up. And the meta description kind of also makes sense for this image. So make use of these HTML tags. So to summarize, ensure your images are accessible to Googlebot. This is the #1 thing that you want to look for. Add an image sitemap so Googlebot can find your images faster. This is your #2, but it's actually optional. You don't have to do this, and it may require a developer's assistance in some cases, but it can help. The text around the image, the title and description of the page should be relevant to the page itself. This is actually super important if you want to rank with your images. For us, it's not enough to just find the images. We also have to understand the images. And that we do by looking at the text around the image, the title, and the description of the page. And finally, add structured data to your pages so your images stand out more in the search results, and that we understand your pages better, and thus sending more accurate traffic, more relevant traffic to your site. And with that, here are a few links that you can follow, well, type in your browser, that may help you learn more about our image publishing guidelines, or to learn more about your site in general in Google's eyes. In the tool we call Webmaster. No, we don't call it Webmaster Tools. We call it Search Console. And if you want to connect with us, if you have questions, for example, then go to /webmastersconnect and find the way that you like the most to connect with us. And with that, thank you. Lauren?
If it's called Search Console, then how come the URL Slugs is Webmasters?
Don't be mean to me. Why are you mean to me?
All right, this is a Q&A section moderated by myself, not Brent Satoris. So
oh, you're not Brent?
Put together that? Yes. Not.
What?
I have less hair and probably less tattoos actually than Brent right now. But no, I'm not. But I do have a lot of good questions that have come in. Okay. The first two that we got during the poll time was one, what exactly is lazy loading? Can you give us a brief overview on what lazy loading for images is and how that works?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, I actually have to tell people? Oh. Okay. So lazy loading. Lazy loading is a way to speed up your site, your pages. Well, actually, your image-heavy pages. Imagine that you normally include images by using that image tag that I was showing a few minutes ago in my presentation. Now, when a user loads that page, the browser has to synchronously, well, mostly synchronously load every single image. Basically, people are waiting for every single image to download, whether they will scroll into position to see that actual image or not. That, for example, if you have an SEJ article and it's very long because Lauren wrote it, and maybe he included a picture of me doing something funny as usual in the bottom of the article. Most people will not scroll down there because, well, to be honest, Lauren's style is a little boring. So, you know, so
Thank you.
people will, sure, anytime, as I said. People will never see my amazing face in the bottom of the article, but the image loaded nonetheless. Now, lazy loading means that with using JavaScript, you only load the images that are in the basically the viewport where that's scrolled into position, or in the content that's actually in the viewport. So, for example, if I scroll down on Lauren's article, then the image wasn't loaded when I accessed the page. When I scrolled into position, then suddenly the image appears because I'm actually on the section of the page that has to show the image. Essentially, that's lazy loading, loading the image only when it's necessary. Now, the problem with lazy loading, there are a few gotchas with lazy loading. Number one is that most of the time, search engines can't see lazy loaded images, and that's because the way lazy loading is generally implemented. Search engines don't scroll, they rather load an immense viewport, and lazy loading usually is achieved by, or the implementation is listening to scroll events. Basically, did you scroll deep enough on the page to warrant an image load? If not, then don't load the image. Since we don't scroll, the image will never get shown. And for that, we have recommendations. I think they are linked from the image publishing guidelines from the previous slide. Hopefully you took note. I could go back, but I will not because I'm mean. Yeah, that was it. Lauren?
We'll send out those links to everybody as well to make up for Gary's meanness. So yeah, thank you. I think we had a lot of questions around that. So one of the next interesting questions actually came from Doc Sheldon. Doc wrote, does Google read, and because you're a photographer, Gary, we thought this might be pretty important. Does Google read EXIF data for categorization and relevance purposes? So all of that great metadata that you can cram into the information around the photo, does Google read that along with alt, schema, titles,
right,
text, etc.?
Right. So embedded metadata we actually don't typically use, mainly because generally historically they were extremely inaccurate. I think that was the main reason. Recently, we introduced support for IPTC photo metadata, and that was one of the biggest or the most heard requests from professional photographers. And that will help us display image credits based on whatever you put in the image metadata. Just to note, these metadata that I'm talking about now and what the question is about is actually embedded in the image itself. It's not something extra you add on the page, but rather something that you add in the image during processing or while actually taking the picture. So yeah, to summarize, we don't support EXIF. or at least not currently. I think the PMs of Google Images are actually looking into it. But we do support, since recently, IPTC photo metadata.
IPTC, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Are you writing an article right now?
No, but Doc may be.
Oh.
So we'll see. Doc, if you want to contribute it to SEJ, that would be perfect. So next question that comes up, and I see this a lot. We talked about alt attributes. We talked about the content around an image, but how important is having a file name or URL slug that helps describe the image? How important is that from a Google indexing perspective and ranking perspective?
I was cut off, sorry.
So how important is the file name in terms of describing the image? So burrito with limes.gif.
So here's the thing with image file names. In case of big sites, let's say Pinterest, for example, it's just simply not feasible to have accurate file names for the images. And in most of the cases, most of the images that we have in our index actually have some either camera-specific file name, like DSC underscore something, some number, or some random hash. I would say that for understanding the image, it can be helpful, but it's not a hard requirement. It's not like the alt attribute. It's more like a nice extra to have. And I would imagine that it would be something that all signals considered equal in case of your and your competitors' images. If you have a better file name, then perhaps you might get ranked better with your image. But otherwise, I honestly don't believe it contributes that much value. And it would be also unreasonable to expect from sites like Getty Images to have all their images properly named.
Great, thank you. So next question, which is kind of interesting as well, is if there is no alt attribute data around the image, which do you usually go to first from a priority perspective? The content around the image or the title of the page?
The content around the image. Okay. The content around the image is typically actually critical to understand the image. So if I had to rank things which I typically don't like to do, I would ensure that, or first I would ensure that you have some content visible on the page. Second, almost a tie with the first, is the alt attribute, and pretty much everything else after that. And you make up the ranking however you want. But if you have content around the page, for example, even just a caption, that will help you a lot. Well, it will help us a lot understanding what the heck the image is about.
Does having text in the image help or hurt, or is it something that doesn't necessarily matter at all?
It doesn't really matter. At the moment, I don't think that we do text recognition from the image at all. So I don't think it will cause pretty much any. Well, it will probably not have absolutely any effect.
Okay, good, interesting. We had that one come up too. What's interesting for me, I know, like on a personal basis, is some of the clients and projects that I work on, we'll see their images appear at the top of the results, right? And then their listing at the bottom. Of course, one being the image does not have the direct traffic results, right, that a listing may have. But are there ways that you would suggest to line up the images? So an image at the top of the Google results may tell a story that influences clicks within the positions themselves. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. Okay, we're good. Do another one. Okay. Dead air. Dead air. Okay.
Well, you asked me these weird questions. It's your fault, really.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the position of the content in general matters on the page. Like, for example, we can distinguish between what's boilerplate, like the head and navigation and whatever, and what the content is. And even within the actual content, we can differentiate between what's above the fold, for example, and what's below the fold. For images, that's less critical. Basically, you can put an image pretty much anywhere on the page, and it can be picked up and then shown in image search, actually Google Images, if the user query wants, or user query is requiring that. Images is slightly different from text. The position on the page, I guess, unless it's some sidebar or some other boilerplate, it doesn't matter much at all.
So, in the same way that links can help with site discovery and rankings, are there any other off-site attributes that can help images rank higher? For example, links to the page with images, maybe the image being resourced off of third parties, hot links, right? Using images when images are basically swept or embedded on third-party sites. Is there anything there that can help with the overall value or quote-unquote page rank of an image? Image rank.
You said the dirty word, page rank. So for the page itself, it matters a lot whether it's linked, for example. And because it matters for the page itself, for the hosting page or landing page, it will matter for the images as well. So typically, the higher the page rank of a page, the better the images on the page will also do. That's not to say that you should go out now and buy 2 million links from some shady person on the internet, because someone will catch you and then you will cause more troubles for yourself than good. But with some mindful thinking, I'm sure you can figure out how to get people naturally linked to your pages, and thus increase your chance to do better in Google Images.
So in the past, I've done a lot of work with things like infographics and stuff like that. And in some scenarios, we would have a site pick up the infographic, link back to our landing page or our site as being the source. In other instances, the site would link back to the image file of the infographic as being the source or resource.
Right.
Do the links to the image file have any influence?
Not at this point, I don't think so.
What about the links to the image file if hosted on the site's domain, having overall assisting the site, or is that kind of a lost link, so to speak?
What? Describe the situation again.
Okay, so the say the infographics hosted on searchenginejournal.com, right?
Yeah.
And as opposed to like something like Flickr or whatnot, and the link points to searchenginejournal.com/WP content/image yada 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 .jpg, right? Now, does that link to the file itself help with the overall link graph or authority graph of the site?
I'm trying to think through how we do that part of indexing, but I can't recall. I would have to look that up.
Okay.
Probably I'm making an educated guess here, and probably that would not matter, or
Gotcha.
wouldn't have any effect.
Gotcha.
But again, this is just an educated guess.
All right, we can follow up on that and write a story about it.
Oh, great! That's just great.
Don't worry, everything you quote is going to turn into a story. So.
Well, I know that Barry will write a story about pretty much everything.
Yeah. That's not called a story. That's called a paragraph about everything. The story is in the comments. Okay, next question. Very good question. Say someone has an e-commerce site, right? Maybe they sell burritos, and they have they sell 20 different types of chicken burritos with lime, right?
Okay.
Some made by the same brand and some from other brands. How to differentiate all of those aught attributes? Say, for example, if the site has 5 different, I don't know any burrito companies, El Paso chicken burritos with limes, frozen chicken burritos with limes, which are delicious, but each one is a little bit different. Maybe one is an 8-ounce burrito, one is a 16-ounce burrito, one is a 2-kilogram burrito. Would we make would we make differences? How do you differentiate in the aught attribute? First question. Second question.
Wait. Let me answer that first.
Okay.
How would you do that if you had a shop like a physical shop that displays these burritos?
We'd do it by the serving size.
So in most of the cases, I think what most people are missing generally in SEO is that like those who give us feedback to our algorithm updates are actually humans who go out and buy things in the real world. So they are accustomed, let's say, to certain things. And basically, you want to, most likely, unless you want to explore new innovative ways to do things, you want to do things in a way that people, like common people, would expect it. So if you would display in your physical shop by how big the burritos are, as well as by the choice of meat or vegetarian or vegan, and so on, then that's how I would do it on the site as well. And that's probably how I would annotate in the auth attribute too.
And then the auth attribute information is probably supported by on-site text and schema information around that, right? Which helps better to define it. So having chicken burrito with lime, 8-ounce chicken burrito with lime, 12-ounce chicken burrito with lime, et cetera, would not necessarily be keyword stuffing if you have chicken burrito with lime appearing 20 times on a page in the auth attribute. Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. Now, does a tag title equals burrito with limes have any value besides just being the mouse over tooltip on desktop?
I think it's mainly used, or is just recommended for the mouse over, and not actually used for anything.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
I think that's just like an accessibility recommendation.
Right. Okay. So the image title doesn't necessarily have much influence on image SEO at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. You got that one, Barry. So we'll be good. Actually, we have to write some of these down before Barry gets started.
Oh, I think you're already late.
Yeah, he's probably doing this right now while he's at their conference.
I actually wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. That guy is amazing.
No, neither would I. So you had mentioned that if the alt attribute is exceptionally long, sometimes it is just not used or ignored. Is there a recommended length of any way? Type of recommended length?
I knew you would pick that up.
I skipped all the questions about the recommended length for meta descriptions, by the way. But I want to do it.
Oh, that's so nice of you. You're just wonderful. Anyway, there's no recommended length. I want to say use as many characters as make sense to describe precisely and concisely the image. Now, if you write like the first book of 50 Shades in the alt attribute, then you're probably going to have a hard time or a bad time for a number of reasons. One will be that it will be too long. The page would load slower, especially if you have multiple images on the page, and each of them has a very long alt attribute. Second is that we are not going to use the whole thing. I mean, why would we use the whole thing? Probably, I actually don't know how many characters, like even if I wanted to tell you, I wouldn't know how many characters we would use, but I'm fairly certain that at one point we just strip away the extra characters. I'm fairly certain that you can go as long as, I don't know, because I'm fairly certain that you want a number.
Probably shouldn't go beyond describing what's in the image itself. Then, like you don't want to stuff it, right? Because you don't want to have content that's repetitive with the content on site. Because if you think about alt attributes at the end of the day, they're really for accessibility, right? So I think you said earlier just to be concise and descriptive, and that should be good.
Yeah, I'm thinking how to be more accurate with what I'm saying, but I don't want to give a number, because one thing is that those numbers may change overnight, and then tomorrow we are going to use fewer characters or more characters, and then you wasted your time. So yeah, I really just want to stick to describe concisely and precisely what the image is about. A few words, not more.
Excellent. So say I have a lot of original images on my site, and maybe I'm a photographer, or I have a gallery or something like that, and I want to share those naturally, right? So I'm sharing them not to get links, but I'm sharing them on platforms like Pixabay or Flickr or others where people may find those images within those systems. And when uploading those images, I'm giving the ability to enter things like a new alt attribute. Should I use the same exact alt attribute that's on my site, or look for something original so I don't have...
No, you can use the same thing. There's no problem with that. One pro tip that I can give is try to keep the biggest size on your side, or on your site. So for example, if you have from the D850, you have a 42 megapixel image that you actually want to display somewhere, host it or put it on your site, not on Instagram. basically all the other channels where you share your images should be lower resolution generally than the canonical place.
Got you. So my owned image on my own site should be a higher resolution or higher quality than what I go out there and place on third parties. Now, is that because the higher quality image is seen as being just a higher quality product or thing for Google to serve in the results?
So generally we prefer to show our users the best available image.
Right.
And then if you put the best available image on hostmyimage.abc, then oh, I hope that's not a real site. Then
I'm not even gonna type that in.
Yeah,
I'm scared
I'm actually yeah. What was it? Host my image ABC.
.abc.
And then if you put it on host my image ABC, then we might display that instead your site, which is kind of not ideal for you.
Got you. Very cool. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we have about 100 or so questions that came in. So just to let everyone know, we can't get to all of those, but if there's any really good ones that show up, that would be fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and read this word for word. How can product images from product listing pages be made available to Googlebot if those images are lazy loaded? Google talks about using the no script, but if we add that, does it create additional nodes and thus impact the overall page performance? I've also heard that using structured data around these images, but I have not seen how to implement that. And we'll provide some examples afterwards, Rebin, but any tips there?
I do have tips.
Okay, let's go for it.
The no script suggestion is the best that you can work with right now. And actually, I will send Lauren a link that I forgot to include in my talk about how to actually implement this. Because there are some implementation gotchas. But no script in general should work. They don't slow down the page load considerably. Obviously, it will have some impact because, or it will have some negative effect because you do add some more bytes to the page, but not. It's far from considerable. And those will be only triggered by clients that are incapable of executing JavaScript. So most of your users, by this point, I'm very certain that it's over 99% of your users will actually never trigger those nodes. Those nodes will not be evaluated by the rendering engine at all because they are only for basically JavaScript-less clients.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. We're almost out of time, but is there anything you'd like to say before we sign off to the SEJ think tank group that's here today?
Yes, I'm very sleepy and I want a coffee, and you have a coffee that you drank and you didn't give me coffee. And you are the meanest person ever, and that's why I was giving you a hard time.
You should not be drinking coffee at 9 p.m., Gary. Your time.
Don't tell me how to live my life.
It's going to totally screw you up. You'll be tossing and turning all night. All right.
Anyway, well, for the attendees, thank you for coming and to listening to our friendly and not so friendly banter with Lauren. I kind of wish that Brent was here because he's just prettier, but you work with what you get. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, so I'll let it go at that. And I think next time we'll invite Matt Cutts to be on our webinar.
Oh, you miss him, huh?
I do, and he's gone so far up in the government now that I'm not sure we can ever get him on, but we'll try. We'll do a follow-up with Mr. Cutts once the voting season is over. So again, thank you very much, Gary. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you being able to make it during this late time.
It's okay.
There, and like you said, you'll be sending over some resources and links. We'll be sending over information on the webinar for everybody that joined late, along with those of you who could not attend. So again, Gary, thank you very much, and talk to you soon.
Yep.
Oh, where can we see you speak at next, by the way, after you're done with your vacation?
What vacation? In Japan, actually in Osaka.
Okay. Well, have a great trip.
2 weeks, maybe.
Awesome. I'll recommend to some of my friends there that they attend. So have a great one, Gary, and thanks everyone again for attending.
You too. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.